Welcome to our session on AI-enabled forecasting, planning, and merchandising for 2021 and beyond. I'm Prashant Agarwal, CEO of Impact Analytics. We are the fastest growing AI retail software company in the US and globally. We've been ranked in the Inc. 500, Deloitte Fast 100, the FT Tech 100 multiple times. We won P&G's Global AI Innovation Challenge in 2019. Our products go to the heart of retail merchandising and help both optimize and automate. Our four core products are Assort Smart, Allocate Smart, Promo Smart, and Attribute Smart. Our products now sit at more than 24 retailers, and we're proud to say that we've had zero churn to date. Our products are built by retailers for retailers. Joining me today are Mark Mazzicchio and Bart Sichel, two senior retail executives. I'm glad that they can be here with us. Just before we begin, I'm going to take 2 minutes to show how AI is disrupting the world and how that same disruption is taking place in retail. There are four pillars of AI. The first, machine learning. The second, robotic decision making. The third, prediction and language processing. And the fourth, computer vision and image processing. Each is applicable to retail. First, machine learning. We all use it every day when we watch Netflix. Netflix has millions of hours of programming, and yet it wants to make its assortment as unique to each of us as possible so that Bart or Mark or Prashant or you are getting your entertainment that you want to watch. That same type of power is possible with Assort Smart for our retail stores. We can now use, for our hundreds of and thousands of SKUs and hundreds of stores, we're able to help build an assortment unique to each store, not using not just size and revenue of store, but product attributes and myriads of other factors to build unique and relevant assortments so the customer gets what she wants when she wants it. The second pillar of AI is robotic decision making. Goldman Sachs, hedge funds, and other banks in New York City are using advanced algorithms to make pricing and trading decisions and making billions of dollars. That same type of precision algorithms can help buyers and planners and buyers make better pricing decisions. PromoSmart optimizes and optimizes and automates the pricing decision matrix, generating quick and sustained margin gains. Third pillar of AI is prediction and language processing. Any of us using Gmail have seen the power of prediction. The early incarnation of this was Gmail saying, hey, it seems you said that there's an attachment to this email, but there's no attachment. Would you like to add one? Today, it's starting it's starting to predict your next word, your next sentence, and your next paragraph. The same thing can happen with allocation. Allocate Smart gives allocators a mathematical allocation in minutes, saving time and providing a much more precise allocation, saving inventory and reducing stockouts. The fourth is computer vision and image processing. Anyone who's used the autopilot on Tesla has seen how powerful image processing can be. That same magic powers Attribute Smart. Attribute Smart recognizes images and automatically creates a first draft attribution. Rote work that used to take hours and days can now take minutes with Attribute Smart. AI is happening today, and it's happening all around us and in retail. Bart, you and I were talking the other day about a Gartner report. I thought it had some interesting things to say. What did you find most interesting from the report?
It did. My big takeaway, and this is a quote far more eloquent than I think I could put it myself, but I really liked it. They said AI will act as the retail nervous system to provide intelligence, automation, and agility in decision making. I think that sums it up really well.
Bart, that's a great segue into a conversation around AI guided forecasting. Mark, you've led large planning organization. What are some of the biggest challenges you faced in traditional retail forecasting? How has it led your teams astray potentially?
Well, I don't want to say that forecasting was ever really easy, but I'd say that it's definitely become more challenging as the years pass, as there's been a proliferation of complicating factors that make it much more difficult to untangle the signal from the noise, particularly when you go from forecasting at a really high level, like what are fourth quarter sales going to be, to a lower level of forecasting, like what is this sweater going to sell in this store, or how can I most profitably fulfill this e-com order among all 300 stores and a couple distribution centers. The complexities like increased pricing transparency, a store base that's less homogeneous, different pricing by location, et cetera, all make it really very difficult for even really bright people to manage in Excel or the other tools that are out there without the aid of AI and machine learning.
It's been incredibly difficult for people out there just with Excel. I mean, it's been as good as it can get. Um, what are some of the things that people are been seeing now with COVID, and how has that changed things?
Well, I mean, I think that something that was very difficult and growing in complexity pre-COVID just got hit right in the head with the hammer of COVID. So what was already being done just fairly directionally well without knowing true quantities or understanding how much a promotion was cannibalizing from another category or cannibalizing from future sales. Now we add on closures and pent-up demand and teasing out how much a promotion or pricing decision is actually driving customer behavior is much more difficult than it's ever been. And it wasn't easy to begin with.
No, it wasn't easy to begin with at all, and COVID has made it much more challenging. I think anybody that predicted COVID and what would happen, more power to them. I think that's been interesting is that, post COVID, we've been really adjusting our forecasts really to the COVID era. And what that means is really using recency and hierarchical forecasting much more. We're adding Apple and Google mobility data, as you both have seen, to make accurate forecasts. As you look into 2021, it's got to be more agile. It's got to be more dynamic, because things are going to change with the vaccine, and how people react to it is an unknown. I think we're all going to be positive about it, but it's still an unknown. And how that changes each store, how that changes each SKU, it's going to be a difficult thing to predict. I'm going to turn to Bart here. One of the things that's been out there is change management and having organizations adapt to AI. What have been some of the biggest barriers prohibiting retailers from their ability to use AI?
I think it's exactly the right question, right? You want to know, why haven't we made faster progress? We all want to get here. I think the biggest challenge, and it ties into the way people operate, the biggest challenge is the amount of data that retailers have. Retailers have huge volumes of data, and much of it, maybe most of it, is unstructured. Now, making sense of unstructured data is something that advanced analytics and AI does really well. Historically, if I wanted to do attribution, if I wanted to take a product and say, what is it about this product that I need to know? Is this shirt blue? Does it have buttons on it? I had to go, and I had someone that's typically an assistant buyer. It was a junior person, hands on keyboards, typing in, this is blue, right? They had to go do this by hand. And so what happened was some companies didn't do it at all. And other companies that did it ended up with patchwork and taking a lot of labor. And even when they did, I might type blue and someone else might type, I don't know what else you'd call this, sky blue or lavender, some other color to describe the same thing. And it gets even trickier when you have something that really is subjective. Let's say I'm trying to decide, is this a core product or a fashion product? I'd call this core, but you might say, oh, that's fashion. Yeah,
it looks very fashionable to me.
Yeah, we try. And so when you have to make that judgment, you end up with the same product with two different people working on it, ending up classified in very different ways. So what I really like is the Attribute Smart product, which, Prashant, when your introduction, you talked about using computer vision, right? Using a camera to be able to detect, what am I looking at and what are the attributes in this product? And it's not always going to be perfect, but if you can get 80 or 90% of these attributes right, you're cutting down in an enormous way on the amount of labor that's required to make this data ready to go on an analytic basis. And you have to have that in order to go do the assortment and attribution, the assortment and allocation, and all the other things that we're going to talk about. So it's exciting because we're getting there, and the Attribute Smart really does that step.
No, you're absolutely right, Bart. I mean, you have to have good attribution. It's the foundation of really a sort and building out a very good assort plan. Mark, I mean, you've been doing assortment planning for a long while. Can you walk us through your journey on assortment planning that led you to Assort Smart?
Yeah, so we were at Belk trying to develop for that department store chain that had about 300 stores across 16 states in the Southeast, a bespoke assortment by location. And that was a real challenge, given that we had about 300,000 different choices, and we had stores that ranged in volume from 2.5 million to 75 million per year. We had physical store layouts that were 18,000 square feet all the way up to 350,000 square feet. So trying to manage that broad SKU base across such a different variety of stores was a challenge. And we decided that our starting point, which was anecdotal feedback from store managers and trying to capture that in Excel spreadsheets, was never going to give us the kind of robust decision-making ability that a tool with AI was. So when we partnered with Impact Analytics on creating Assort Smart, we went with the premise of bespoke assortment. However, that could be subject to any amount of clusters or constraints or rules that buyers or planners would want to put over the tool. For example, no more than 3 different unique assortments. And I'm sorry.
Well, one of the interesting things about what you did is, and this goes into the change management that Bart was talking about, was like a walk, crawl, run approach. Let's not do the whole thing right at once. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, this patchwork of Excel spreadsheets that we were starting with wasn't consistent, it wasn't stable, and it was very time consuming. So we felt that it would be a real win to get the users on something that had a more intuitive UI and that would actually recommend a buy quantity that was based on math and history and science rather than was the best guess of whoever your varying skilled set of planners or buyers would be. So that was the crawl that we built from. And then when it got to walking and running, we added on a little bit more complexity and a little bit more localization, location by location.
And how about BOPUS, BOPAC, ship from store?
Well, nothing hard is ever easy, and that was a real challenge because meanwhile, as we're trying to develop a bespoke assortment by store, other technologies that we were developing within the company were also making it much more difficult to say who should get credit for a particular sale. Is it a sale based on somebody that walked into the store and wanted it? Or is it a sale that was generated online and is getting fulfilled by that location because they've got too much of it? So built into the solution are attribution of where the demand comes in, so you don't just end up repeating the mistakes of past allocations in future assortment buildouts.
Well, that actually dwells right into the next piece that we wanted to talk about, which was allocation. Bart, you spent some time thinking about allocation. Maybe you could pick it up from here.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. The 3 of us have talked about this, right? If you get the assortment right, do you need allocation, right? Or have you nailed the whole thing? Maybe at some point, years down the road, we'll get there. But in the real world, your assortment just sets out what you intend to do. But then you've got to practically get the product into the stores. Now, in the past, and this is, I'm going to come back to this theme of how do we realize these things? How do we make them operational? In the past, again, right, manual work. I had my allocators sometimes on a store by store basis, on a SKU by SKU basis, figuring out how much do I need to send where. It's not a good use of manpower. And it's characteristic of of how a lot of retailers are still doing allocation. Some have automated parts of it, but there's still a manual element. So what I like about Allocate Smart is it goes a long way towards leveraging both the ideal assortment that comes out of the assortment planning that Mark's been walking through, but then makes it practical in terms of how much demand do I actually have? What do I have to do to adjust and meet my real-time conditions on the ground by using artificial intelligence, by using advanced analytics to line up the product I'm sending with what my demand is in real time at the store. And the objective in that optimization is not only to maximize sales, but just as importantly, to minimize the amount of risk I'm introducing into the system. And the big risk as retailers we all worry about is markdowns. I want to get the right amount of product so that I don't have leftover product that I've got to spend money against clearing. And so what I really like about the way this optimization works is it allows you to get a lot closer to that and really pull back those dollars. It becomes very productive when you get that to work right.
No, that's very, very well said. And I think as we get into 2021 and you have that vaccine that the three of us have talked about all day long, you're going to have to be very dynamic and agile with that allocation. Some places are going to need some more stuff. Some places are going to need less of stuff. As we wrap up here, Mark, Bart, going to ask you both for some final thoughts. How do people begin? What would you do? What would be the call to action over here?
Well, I'll go first. Prashant, I think that over the next decade, it's imperative for all retailers to develop machine learning, artificial intelligence capabilities, whether they do that internally or whether they partner with somebody to do it, because there just is not going to be a way to optimize assortments, pricing, fulfillment, and these really complex things without aiding smart people with pattern recognition that you can only get through this type of software. So my advice would be either build it yourself or learn the way that I learned, that a much more sustainable and inexpensive way to do it is to find a partner like Impact Analytics that has retail experts and data scientists that can help bring these tools to life for you and your organization.
I'll jump in, but I don't have a ton to add. I think Mark said the what really well. Let me just close then talking about kind of the couple things I see. I think that it's absolutely imperative in order to make this actually work in the real world that you have a solution that's going to fit with a retailer's existing processes and the infrastructure they have in place. So I'm sure you've all been seeing, this is a hot topic, you've seen this week at NRF, you've seen other presentations talking about automation, talking about artificial analytics. What is going to differentiate is going to be how well these solutions fit in with what you're doing today. Can this seamlessly integrate with how you operate your business? Because that's what's going to massively accelerate your time to market, and the speed is then going to translate into value that you're going to pull in. The other big thing, and I think this is so crucial, and I think this builds on what Mark was describing, if you had $10 or $20 million, you could go build this yourself. But most retailers, especially mid-sized retailers, aren't going to have $20 million to invest in developing their own systems. And that's why it's so important that you think about, how do I get the leverage of working with a partner that's already gone out and solved this? And so what I love is how scrappy the team at Impact Analytics is, and how they've stood up so many mid-sized retailers on these platforms in a way that's meaningfully accretive because of the way they can work with our retailer and really get that done in a timely way and in an effective way. So speed, fit, and cost, you've got yourself an AI-driven program that's going to add a lot of value.
Thank you, Bart. Thank you, Mark. I'll just add, I very much agree with both of you. And one of the things that we get asked a lot about is, oh, well, we're not ready with our data. I think that everybody's ready with their data. And it's an old adage, you go to war with the army you have, you go to AI with the data you have. You start now, And as you build this out, you'll get your data better and better. But the thing is to start now. Look, thank you both. What I'm going to do now is turn it over to the audience for questions. Um, so our first question goes to.
You may now.
So our first question actually goes to AI journey. The question really is for retailers starting their AI journey. Where would you start? We touched on this a little bit, Mark, but maybe you could talk a little bit more on it, both of you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I made it clear that I believe that a partner is a very good way to get results and to do it economically. I think the things that you really need to start are what is your primary business problem that you want to solve? For us, for example, we thought that our assortment opportunity was the biggest one. So I think you start with what do you want to solve? And then I think you need an executive sponsor, somebody that's going to guide the process and help select a partner. And I think you need, in the beginning, at least one, I would say, dedicated or semi-dedicated resource. And in my experience, that has always been my most data savvy member of my team, somebody that maybe wasn't a data scientist, but could have been had they studied that way and was familiar enough with promotions and price elasticities and assortment so that they could help guide a partner. And then I would start assessing partners that could help do the kind of things that we in Impact Analytics started on and accomplished.
Bart, anything to add there?
I think that actually gets at it really well. Let's keep rolling. I know there's a bunch of questions people are asking.
I'm just going to add one quick thing, and that's on data. And, I've talked to so many retailers. Some are like, oh, we need to get better data. I think you start with the data you have. Don't wait for more data or better data. That's always going to be a challenge. Really, retailers have enough data to get going. So that's just one thing I wanted to add. You're right, Bart. We have a lot.
Prashant, then I will jump in. So just building on that, the thing I find is there are a lot of cases where retailers get caught up trying to get the solution exactly right? To your point, they're waiting for the right data or they're waiting for the solution to cover everything. I would really encourage people to jump in, get started, get things moving, because you'll learn so much each step of the way. Just, don't let, right, that great phrase, don't let the best be the enemy of the good. Just go get started.
Makes so much sense. Second question, and it follows a little bit on the first, how have you managed adoption and change management? You want to take that one, Bart?
Yeah, I'll at least take a start at it. So there's really two parts. When you think about change management and adoption, there's the senior team who may come in saying, we want to do something, but we're skeptical. We don't want to risk, X, Y, or Z, right? You got to prove it to us. And so for that group, the change management element is to carve off one piece of business at a time, make the change, show them that, first of all, the most important thing you're looking at is, does anything blow up? Before they're even looking for how great can this be, it's, did you screw anything up? So you've got to demonstrate we can do this, we can get it up and running. And then you start to prove out the results and you build that excitement at the senior level. But the change management piece, which is so hard, is also getting people whose jobs have been to do something a certain way. That's what I do for a living. I enter things on a list, right? There are a lot of elements to this where there's a lot of manual processes, and it's how people have defined their jobs. And so the change management piece has to make sure you're very clearly helping people along and understanding your jobs are going to change. Here's what's going to change. We're behind you. We're going to support you. You're not losing your, in some cases, if you're automated enough, they may, but for the most part, you're not losing your job. Your job is just going to change. You're going to do more with the time you have, right? We're going to automate these elements and you're going to have more impact on strategic thinking, not just tactical, typing things in. So that's my thought on change management.
Very helpful. Mark, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the one thing that I'd add to that is bringing in the doers at an early part in the process. I mean, your executive sponsor and your day-to-day lead internally can be great at moving it forward. But say you've got a business that's got accessories and basics and then fashion apparel, you're going to want to make sure that you get some of your best and brightest across all of those different areas represented, so that as you're finding a solution, you don't have to take huge steps backwards by getting feedback way too late. So I would bring a significant members of the team along in the journey as you go.
Makes total sense. We do have a lot of questions. I'm going to ask one more here. It's about automation and allocation. And Mark, you've done a lot around this. Is this a function that can be automated through AI? Is a question.
Well, I do think that the difference between, and Bart said it very well, difference between developing an assortment 6 or 9 months ahead of time and actually allocating that at the point where it's at or about to hit your distribution center is that things have changed. Stores have closed, COVID's gotten worse, COVID's improved, a hurricane has hit and either decreased demand or then increased demand. So, but AI is uniquely available to separate out what is the core demand and what is a temporary demand, a little icing on top of that cake. So but it isn't a snap your fingers and you'll have a solution in 3 days. Now that we've done assortment, let's just make it do allocate. You have to fine tune and work on developing how sensitive you want it to be to changes and trends. And but there is nothing better able, in my opinion, than AI to improve the way allocation is done.
Makes sense. We've got a couple minutes left and a lot of questions. One, how are you forecasting in 2021? 2020 isn't a great comp year, so how do you forecast 2021 when we clearly don't want March of 21 to look like March of 20? Bart?
You want to jump in, or I'll take a first step. Well, the most important thing is to be thoughtful about it. You can use, and I know everybody is using 2019 as a baseline, but you don't want 2019 straight up. You want to look at 2019 in the context of what growth would you have had, and then what growth would you be expecting on top of that. So there's quite a bit of manipulation, and I think the key is to look at is to look at what are the places where we can use an advanced analytic approach to bridge those gaps and to tie together where you were, what did or didn't happen in 20, this kind of dead year, and then where 21 gets to.
No, I think that's right, Bart. I mean, I think the thing that we've been using is a framework which uses recency as a huge factor. So what's happened in the last 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks? Some products you want to use a lot more in the recency. Some products you want to do what you said, go back to 2019 and see what it did, and then actually say, okay, we believe this on 2021. And the beauty of AI is that it can do this. Human intervention alone will just not be able to do it. A combination of human intervention and AI will be able to do it. So one last question, right? How do you set expectations with retailers to trust the output, right? You've got AI, it's got this magic formula. How did you get your teams to trust the output?
Well, I can touch on that. I mean, I think that some of the tools that Impact Analytics has developed are so intuitive in being able to see the layers of what is causing a decision. So the visualizations of the tools are very good. So people can start to tear something up. If you say, here's what went into the black box and here's what came out, well, I don't trust it. But if you can show them the impacts of here's how much pent-up demand is in the forecast, here is how much your pricing decision made in driving a result, here's how much cannibalization we think that we took from another area by promoting, people that are smart, your best team members are going to start putting together yeah, this makes sense. What we're seeing in the results is an addition and subtraction of all of these different factors, and people get it.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. We would be remiss without saying that do contact us, info@impactanalytics.co, not .com, .co, or prashant@impactanalytics.co. If you have further questions, I'd be happy to answer them. We can get Mark and Bart to answer them for you as well. But do reach out. I think it'd be great to just exchange ideas, see where you are and where we might be able to be helpful, or just exchange ideas on where AI and analytics is going in 2021. Thank you all. We really appreciate your time. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you all soon. Thank you.